You are dressed in 2 seconds flat, sliding on a simple black shirt over plain slacks that balloon out at your waist slightly. You don't have time to look in a mirror, but you've lost weight since you've been here. There's no doubt about that. Your clothes just don't fit you as well as they should. In fact, they look one size too big, like you were simply borrowing someone else's clothes for a special assignment. It only served to further remind you that you were not an interpreter anymore, and a part of you doubted that you would ever be again. Even if you did manage to find your way back to your old academia, there would be no way that you could ever interpret simple trade negotiations after all you had been through. It seemed too mundane, too tedious and dull, after all that you had experienced here. Nevertheless, you do your best to look as professional as possible as you march down the corridor beside General Hux with 2 stormtroopers bringing up the rear. You couldn't believe he would just barge into Kylo rooms unannounced. Which of course was code for you still couldn't believe that you had just walked into the living room and allowed him to see you naked without checking to see who it was. "So, are you enjoying your time here?" Hux asks pleasantly as you walk. "Enjoying your accommodations?" "They're adequate," you reply simply. "Adequate," he muses, as if this is somehow funny. "And how is Ren treating you?" "I'm a prisoner here," you reply curtly. "He's keeping me in my place." The corner of Hux's mouth perks up, and his voice drops just a bit. "I bet he is." "You know you should just let that go, but you can't help yourself." "What was that, General?" you ask lightly. "Nothing," Hux replies, casually mimicking your tone. "Ren always did have terrible taste." You let a breath in and out through your nose as you purse your lips shut, unsure of which implication you should be more offended by. You could see why Kylo didn't like him, but you do your best to wipe the look of indignation off your face as you try to appear unfazed. "And how can I be of assistance today, General?" "I believe today only your linguistic skills are required," he says matter-of-factly. It takes you a moment to figure out what other skills he's referencing, and your face falls as you process this new insinuation. Your disdain for Hux was starting to border on abhorrence. If Kylo had to put up with him every minute of every damn day, you could see why he had to smash in consoles on an almost daily basis just to stay sane. "So, one of the Tortuderu are alive?" you ask cautiously, trying not to let any emotion slip into your voice. "2 of them," he replies simply. "So far they've all but resisted Ren's mental efforts for more information. He insisted that you would be useless, but I would like to see for myself." You mentally brace yourself. Kylo had said you were useless? Or was he just trying to keep you out of it? Yes, that was it, you decided. He was trying to keep you out of Hux's way, trying to keep you safe. "I, of course, will do whatever I can to help the First Order," you say as levelly as possible. "Good," Hux says curtly, as he leads you into a large room. There's nothing in this room except for 2 stormtroopers who immediately snap to attention as soon as General Hux walks in. There's a large glass window along one wall, and you can see Taro through it, sitting with his hands chained together at his wrists. His head is bowed and his eyes are shut. It's all you can do not to run in the room and attempt to pull the cuffs off of him with your bare hands. You turn to Hux to see him studying your reaction carefully and quickly make an effort to compose yourself. "So what do you want with him?" "Are you sure you can help us?" Hux asks. "You look..." He pauses, trying to settle on the right word. "Concerned." "You betrayed both my confidence and my safety," you tell him. "I have no feelings for him whatsoever. I have since pledged my loyalties to Kylo Ren and to the First Order, and I will do whatever it takes to prove that." "After you," he says, and you follow him into the room. There's already a chair set up for you, a small metal chair that doesn't swivel, but creaks when you sit down in it, as though it won't support your narrow frame. Taro looks up as you sit down, his face conveying a mixture of emotions, none of which is surprise. General Hux opens his mouth to speak. "Tell him, release his restraints," you command. A stormtrooper that is standing just inside the door hesitates as you turn to him. "I can't interpret what he says if he can't use his hands. Release his restraints." Hux glares at you, but gestures for the stormtrooper to go ahead. Tell him that you're our prisoner, he says. You look at Taro and pick up your hands. He wants me to tell you that I'm his prisoner. You pluck your thumb under your chin, though, negating at least that last part of that sentence. Taro lets out a long breath and seems to collect himself. It looks like it's hard for him to move his hands, and you wonder how long he's been chained up like that. He rubs at one wrist in particular, and you can see tender, purple marks cut into his dark green flesh. What's that mean? Hux demands. What's he saying? He's rubbing his wrist. You snap at him. You turn to Taro and express what you can with your eyes, refusing to move your hands. What a stupid asshole. Taro makes the sign for safe, eyebrows raised in question, and you nod your head slowly. He says he understands, you tell Hux. This is going to be a dangerous game of cat and mouse, you know that, and you can only hope Kylo Ren is not around to tap into your thoughts and see that you're not playing the role of the good little neutral interpreter. Not right now. There is too much at stake for that. Taro seems to sense your reluctance as he reaches out and puts his hand on top of your head. He's greeting me, you tell Hux. You're not sure if you feel the Force at work or something else entirely, but you can feel Taro reconstructing the wall back in your mind, or maybe you only think you feel it because you know that's what he's doing. You're not sure how quickly Kylo Ren is going to tear it down, or how painful that is going to be, but it's necessary for this conversation. You don't know if Kylo Ren is out of sight but listening in, trying to determine where your true loyalties lie. Tell him that all of his friends are dead, Hux snaps. He's the only one left. You pick up your hands. He wants me to tell you that everyone's dead, but he just told me in the hallway that there are 2 of you still alive. What is taking so long? Hux demands. You spin around to look at him. I told you to tell him that his friends are dead. His friends are dead. That's 4 words. What are you telling him? There's a little thing called dynamic equivalence, you snap. Culturally, the concept of death with a tortudero is very complicated. You have your first death, you sign with your hands, fruit apple basket. Then you also have the fish bread, but then you need to distinguish it from the ASSHOLE. The signs are authentic enough, and you sign with such conviction that he just rolls his eyes and lets you get on with it. Taro turns back to you, and even though all he saw was fruit, apple basket, fish, bread, asshole, he gets what you were trying to do. He picks up his hands. Are you safe? You take a deep breath. Concentrate. Just clarifying what you said, you tell Hux, that all his friends are dead. But as that's what you're physically saying, you're signing something else entirely, trying to split yourself into 2 people that control your voice and your hands separately. You know your signing is going to suffer a bit, as it's not as natural to you as basic, but short, simple sentences would be more than enough to get the point across. Luckily, Kylo Ren likes me. Been staying in his room. Not bad, he likes me. Taro looks relieved, and Hux notices this. What are you telling him? Just what you asked, you insist. He's just relieved they're at peace now. You turn to Taro and sign, peace now, saying it out loud for emphasis, and Taro just nods, blindly trusting you and going along with whatever the hell it is you're doing. Honestly, you have to be at the top of your game right now, because there have been so many times in the past that you had accidentally signed what you meant to say, or said what you meant to sign, and that would have extremely fatal results if you slept up here. We want a list of names, Hux says, of everyone that was involved in this, and everyone who you interacted with on base, including everyone that was truly Force sensitive. We want every name you gave to the Resistance. You turn to Taro. He wants names. Are you okay? What did they do to you? Don't worry about me. Keep yourself safe around Kylo Ren. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. How many times had he encouraged you to do that? Shouldn't he know by now that Kylo Ren wasn't really as bad as everyone said he was? Or did he know something you didn't? Well, Hux demands, and you turn to Taro sharply. He wants an answer, you warn him. Taro nods and gives you the sign for proceed, and so you start talking as he signs. Taro says that they never wrote anything down, so there wouldn't be a paper trail. He says that B handled actually contacting the Resistance to give them the names, but you aren't going to get any answers now because... You can't believe what you're seeing as you watch Taro cut through the air with his finger, but you mutter it anyway. Because I watched Kylo Ren run him through with his lightsaber. Oh, Ren didn't tell you about that, Hux asks, and you turn to glare at him. It made sense, you tell yourself. B had used him, and he was just as bitter and angry and vengeful about it as you were. You had assumed he had killed him, but somehow the confirmation made it all the more damning. After all of the goading to be angry at B, he never once mentioned that he was the one who had killed him. You stare at Taro, and he just closes his eyes and nods his head solemnly. You feel like you're about to be sick, but you have a job to do here. You can talk to Ren, or yell at Ren, later. Does he have any other useful information that he can give us? Hux asks. What? You ask, turning to him sharply. Is there anything else he knows? Hux demands. You stare at him, incredulous, unable to shake the mental image of Kylo's glowing red blade from your mind. There's no reason to keep him alive if he has nothing we need. You turn sharply to Taro, your hands practically shaking as you stumble through your words. They're going to kill you if you don't know anything. Quick, think of something. Taro just shakes his head as he points to you, repeating the sign for safe. You shake your head, not understanding. Suddenly, Hux holds up one hand and the stormtrooper comes at you from behind, grabbing you by the neck as he pulls you roughly to your feet. You can feel the tip of the blaster pushing sharply against your lower back. Ask him again if he doesn't know anything, Hux shouts. Do you know anything? You ask quickly. I think Hux might kill me. Taro just shakes his head, pointing at you as he makes the sign for safe again. Suddenly, it all fits together. He wasn't worried about his own safety. He was worried about yours. But he wasn't phrasing it as a question. He was saying that you are safe. And you were safe because... You're not going to kill me, you huff, calling his bluff. If you kill me, Kylo Ren is going to take that lightsaber of his and slice through your spine. You know I'm right. Are you so sure about that? Hux asks. The stormtrooper looks back at him uncertainly, and he signals for him to stop. He lets you go, and you drop back thankfully into the chair. I should have known this would be a waste of time, he snorts. Let's go. You look back pleadingly at Taro, but he just nods and gestures for you to go. You reach out and put your hand on the top of his head. You know it didn't do anything, but it made his earlier gesture look all the more convincing nonetheless. Maybe it was just a way for him to put the shield up in your mind, but that didn't mean it couldn't mean something else. Between you, it had developed into a friendly gesture of comfort and protection. Before you leave the room, you turn back to see Taro cross his fingers. Best friend. You repeat the sign back to him as you let the door slide shut behind you. Hux gestures to the stormtroopers and they start leading the way out of the room, 2 in front of you, 2 behind you. I hope that was helpful, you say, making no attempt to hide the sarcasm in your voice. Oh yes, it was extremely insightful, Hux replies, although I'm surprised Ren didn't tell you that he was the one who killed that professor. He told me, you reply simply, trying to get the upper hand. I was just surprised that Taro was there to see it, that's all. Really? Hux asks. And I'm guessing he told you that he flew into a rage and murdered the rest of your little friends too? For a minute, your brain doesn't know how to even process the question. Your jaw drops open, but you can't recover yourself, not from this. He didn't... You stammer, trying to form a cohesive thought. They're not dead, they were... Oh yes, sold into slavery, Hux says nonchalantly. Right, I forget that's what he wanted to tell you. He figured you would be more cooperative if you assumed that your friends were still alive. Not that you would find out the truth either way. Your stomach sinks and you feel like you're about to be sick, and it's in that moment that you realize that you're not headed back to Kylo Ren's room. Where are you taking me? You ask softly. To your new quarters, Hux says, a smirk playing on his lips. I believe you'll find them... What was that word you used? Adequate? I want to speak to him, you say, struggling to keep your voice calm. I want to speak to Ren. Ren? Hux asks. He's far too busy to deal with the likes of you. He leads you into a new area of the base that you had never seen before, but you can barely focus on where you're going. Your heart is pounding in your chest, trying to pick apart what this all meant. Finally, he stops outside one door in particular. I believe this is the one, he says simply. He gestures for one of the stormtroopers to open the door, and another one grabs you by the arms as they steer you inside. You recognize the room and its plain white walls immediately. It's the same cell that you were locked in before, after you had been captured the first time. You knew it was the same cell because there was a large blood stain in the corner where C had been bleeding out, where he had probably died. Ren is going to be so pissed when he finds out what you're doing. You snap at Hux. Pissed? Hux looks genuinely confused, and you hope it's simply because he's a fantastic actor. Kylo Ren is the one who ordered you here. You can feel your blood turn to ice in your veins. Explain. He figured we might need someone who could still communicate with the Tortuga on board, he says simply, and so he figured, why not use you, the girl who was so easily manipulated in the first place? It would be so easy to manipulate you again, especially considering your feelings for Ren. He smiles, gloating. So he fucked you and pretended to care about you to see if there was anything else you would divulge that he couldn't get by seeing in your mind. But considering we're about to kill that green thing downstairs, I'd say we really don't need your cooperation anymore. You've far exceeded your usefulness. You're lying, you tell him as a stormtrooper walks out of the cell. Hux offers you a pitiful smile. Ren was right. You are quite the pathetic little fool. And with that, the door slams shut, leaving you locked alone with a cell of ghosts. No, you whisper quietly to yourself as you begin to pace the length of the room. You imagine the crimson glow of Ren's lightsaber again. That was what he had used to kill B. That's what you had assumed before, but now it was fact, irreversible fact. You can only imagine the fear in B's eyes as he saw it coming, how he must have braced himself for that final burst of pain. It was okay when you had assumed that B had died, like it was just some sort of abstract concept. But it was another thing to picture his fear, his pain, before he was cut in half. And what about Sadie and Ladson and Shane? Did Ren really kill them all? No, he didn't, you whisper to yourself. It's just Hux being stupid. Kylo's going to come get you out. But even as you say it, you can't be so sure. Kylo Ren had a reputation for being evil. You were the only one who didn't see it. Could it really be that you were so blinded by your feelings for him? You remember when you had accused him of using you. He had immediately turned the conversation back on himself. Had that been a ploy to keep you distracted? And what did he say after that? That was when he said that he liked you. Unfortunate timing, or was Hux right? Was Kylo really just using you to keep you cooperative? Had he been fucking you this entire time just as another way of manipulating you and toying with your emotions, making you docile and receptive so you would do anything for him? I'm not useful anymore, you say quietly as you drop to your knees. With B and the others dead and all the Tortuga gone, they would have no need for you as a linguist or as an interpreter. Kylo could always keep you around to fuck you, but that's probably why things had been drawn out for as long as they had. There were a lot of other slaves out there in the galaxy to give him his release that weren't as politically dangerous as you were. Not that they could take a punch as well as you could, but... You punched the floor with your fist, immediately regretting the sharp sting of pain that ran up your arm. You had thought that the sparring and the play fighting was all a means of helping you protect yourself, but maybe that's just what got him off. You clutch your throbbing wrist to your chest as you close your eyes and try to reach out to him with your mind. You can see the familiar blackness behind your eyelids, but something feels different somehow. You feel closed in and sealed off, and you suddenly remember that Taro had put the wall back up in your mind. It may disappear after they killed him, but right now it was stronger than ever. You could feel it. You weren't going to be able to knock it down. You weren't going to be able to reach out to him. You close your eyes and in the back of your mind you hear it, the steady hum of his lightsaber. Suddenly it's followed by Sadie's shriek, Ladson's cry, Shane's yell. Down they go, one by one. You had been wrong before. The last time you were in this room, you had said that B was going to be the last to die. But he had been first. Your friends had been next. And now it was Taro's turn. You were wrong. B wasn't going to be the last one to die. You were.